motives in what he was doing as a father. It was to try to toughen up his son, to correct what he perceived as weaknesses. I suppose ultimately perhaps to recreate the self-reliant, self-confident boy that Philip was turned into by the Gordonston system.
Father and son did come to share common ground, however. The Duke passed on his love of painting and a passion for the environment and conservation. The bond with Princess Anne was clear. Alike in many ways, she was outspoken and she knew how to deal with her father's similarly frank manner. He shared a naval background with Prince Andrew, both having served in fields of conflict. And he may have been disappointed when Prince Edward chose to leave the Royal Marines, but over the years, their relationship grew ever closer. It was to his youngest son that Philip entrusted perhaps his greatest legacy, the Duke of Edinburgh's award.
What's it like working with your father?
He doesn't, don't worry.
It's very easy.
He does his own thing.
And now the veil is thrown back and we can see the Princess of Wales.
There were difficult years when the marriages of 3 of his 4 children failed, the most public, the split of Charles and Diana. What emerged much later, to the surprise of some, was the extent to which he tried to help. During the breakup, he'd written to his daughter-in-law, and the tone of his letters and her replies revealed a softer, compassionate side to the Duke rarely seen in public. Dearest Pa, she wrote in 1992, that she was pleased to receive his letter, and particularly so to read that he was desperately anxious to help. He replied, if invited, he would always do his utmost to help, but was quite ready to concede that he had no talents as a marriage counsellor.
There was no doubt on her part that gruff and stern though Philip could often be, that his motives were of the best, and she appreciated that.
Into his 90s, public engagements became for his grandson Harry's wedding. 2 years later, isolating at Windsor, he was there for his granddaughter Beatrice.
A heavy program of official engagements prevents the Princess and the Duke from seeing their son as often as they wish. It is only on occasions like this that they can enjoy the happiness of parenthood.
It was a long life where duty and family responsibility often came into conflict. The pandemic, as has been the case for so many families, deprived his loved ones of direct contact with him in his final months. His diminishing influence as the family patriarch coincided with a time of great public and private upset for the family. Perhaps the Duke's steadying influence and forthright manner were missed. His children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren will be united in mourning his loss.
Our correspondent Sarah Campbell there talking about the Duke's influence on the family, different generations of the family, and on his relationships with different members of the family over the years. Now, we heard earlier from some of the political leaders across the UK. We heard from the First Minister in Scotland and the First Minister of Wales, and indeed in Northern Ireland. Maybe we should add a little more now about the sense of the public reaction. So let's join our Scotland editor, Sarah Smith at Holyrood. The First Minister's message was clear earlier, Sarah. What can you tell us about maybe some wider reaction given the links between the family and Scotland?
Yes, well, people in Edinburgh feel an obvious connection to Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, and the confirmation of his death was posted on the gates here at Holyrood Palace, just as it was at Buckingham Palace this afternoon. And the First Minister said she extended her deepest sympathy to the royal family on behalf of all of the people of Scotland, noting the long contribution to public life in Scotland from the Duke of Edinburgh and saying it had left a profound mark on its people. The most significant and immediate consequence of the death of His Royal Highness was the immediate suspension of all political campaigning in the Scottish parliamentary election. That will not resume again until Tuesday. And the Duke of Edinburgh was a frequent visitor to the city. He always said he had a soft spot for it, dating all the way back to his time when he was stationed at Rosyth, nearby in Fife, during World War II, when he and some of the other sailors used to come into Edinburgh for a bit of R&R. He was also the Chancellor of Edinburgh University for over 50 years, where people said that during that time he provided invaluable support to students and again until Tuesday. And the Duke of Edinburgh was a frequent visitor to the city. He always said he had a soft spot for it, dating all the way back to his time when he was stationed at Rosyth, nearby in Fife, during World War II, when he and some of the other sailors dating from his time at Gordonston School all the way up to all those long family holidays at Balmoral Castle in Deeside.
Sarah, thank you so much. Sarah Smith on the many links between the Duke and the city of Edinburgh. Let's go to Belfast. Our correspondent Emma Vardy is there. We heard from Arlene Foster earlier and indeed from the Deputy First Minister as well. I'm just thinking, Emma, what have you picked up today on the public's response to today's news?
Well, look, the Duke of Edinburgh at some of its most famous locations here, including with the Queen at the incredible Giant's Causeway. And it's quite fitting, really, that his final visit to Northern Ireland was in 2017, when he came to meet many young people who'd completed his Duke of Edinburgh Awards scheme. But look, people have also been remembering today how Prince Philip continued to visit Northern Ireland during the difficult days of the Troubles, and that was all brought very close to home for him when his uncle, Lord Mountbatten, was murdered by the IRA when a bomb was detonated on his boat at Mullaghmore in Ireland in 1979. So it is significant today that among those people paying tribute to him was Michelle O'Neill, the deputy leader of Sinn Féin, of course the Republican Party that was once best known as the political wing of the IRA. Now, of course, in Northern Ireland in recent days, we have seen scenes of disorder breaking out, more reminiscent of the past. And there were a number of loyalist protests planned for tonight, which have now been called off by various organisations as a mark of respect.
Emma, thanks so much. Emma Vardy, our correspondent there in Belfast. Let's get the mood after this news in Wales then. Let's go down to Cardiff Castle, and my colleague Sian Lloyd is there. And of course, the Duke had been a frequent visitor to Cardiff over the years. Sian was Colonel of the Welsh Guards for many years. What are people saying there today?
Well, Hugh, people across Wales have been paying their tributes to the Duke of Edinburgh, and at civic buildings, including here at Cardiff Castle, flags have been lowered and online books of condolence have been opened for people to leave their personal messages. Over the years, the Duke of Edinburgh visited Wales on numerous occasions, often accompanying the Queen, of course. But it will be a visit that he made in the immediate aftermath of the Aberfan disaster in 1966 that will be particularly remembered by many here today. At that time, 116 children and 28 adults lost their lives when coal slurry engulfed Pantglas School, and the Duke arrived very soon after that disaster. He spoke to grieving families and to members of the rescue teams, and he offered comfort to many. He returned a week later with the Queen, and the couple returned to Aberfan on numerous occasions over the years. The Duke of Edinburgh had a lasting relationship with Wales and its people, and he took a keen interest in Welsh life, from serving as Chancellor of the University of Wales to attending the opening of the Senedd, where tributes will be paid on Monday.
Sian, many thanks again. Sian Lloyd with some of the thoughts there in Cardiff and indeed across Wales. We've been talking about the influences on Prince Philip as he grew up, and of course his career in the Royal Navy as a young man was seen as a hugely important influence on his character. As a midshipman, he was mentioned in dispatches for his bravery. That's something that Boris Johnson mentioned today. And when royal duties displaced his naval career, he then worked to keep Britain's maritime history very much alive. My colleague Rita Chakrabarti looks at the Duke's lifelong attachment and loyalty to the Royal Navy.
Navy and life at sea were a huge part of the Duke of Edinburgh's career. It had been a British destroyer that had taken him, as a toddler, into exile from his native Greece. Two of his sons were naval officers, Prince Charles and Prince Andrew, taking up where he'd left off after his wife became Queen. Prince Philip joined the Navy straight from school. As a cadet, he first met Princess Elizabeth in 1939, when she visited Britannia Royal Naval College in Dartmouth with her parents. Active service came during World War II in 1940 as a midshipman on the old battleship HMS Ramillies. Years later, he reflected on life as a sailor.
You're exposed to the elements in a way which you're not ashore in any time, because you've got your feet on the earth, as it were, and you've got some sort of security, shelter and so on. Whereas at sea, you're in a cockle shell in this enormous expanse of the ocean, so that tends to cut you down to size a bit.
In 1941, Philip joined HMS Valiant, operating in some danger in the Mediterranean. During the Battle of Cape Matapan, he earned a mention in dispatches for directing searchlights onto enemy cruisers.
We were hit by two bombs. The whole ship bent like that with the explosions, and actually bent sufficiently for some of the hatches down below to be jammed. So several people rang up and said, please, can you get a tin opener? We'd like to get out, you know.
Promotion followed, and a posting to a destroyer on hazardous convoy duty in the North Sea, before he returned to the Mediterranean in support of the Allied invasion of Sicily. At the end of the war, he was in Tokyo Bay to witness the surrender of Japanese forces. After his marriage, he studied at the Royal Naval College in Greenwich and was posted to Malta. It was clearly a happy time for them both. In 1950, Philip was given his first command, the frigate HMS Magpie. But his active naval career ended 2 years later when the Queen succeeded to the throne. He accepted this momentous change in his life and simply got on with the job. But his contemporaries always believed that he could have achieved high rank.
I remember Lord Mountbatten talking to me when I was First Sea Lord, and he said, of course, if Philip had stayed in the Navy, there would have been great competition between you. I don't think the competition would have been very strong, actually. He would have got it.
Do you think so?
Oh, yes.
Royal duties were now his first priority. But the Duke maintained his interest in Britain's maritime heritage. And on the 50th anniversary of the end of the war, he was quick to leave the royal podium to march alongside his old comrades.
Rita Chakrabarti there with the Duke's very strong attachment to the Royal Navy. There's no question, of course, that one of Prince Philip's greatest contributions to public life, indeed, some would say the greatest, was the scheme that he established back in 1956, very familiar scheme, the Duke of Edinburgh's Award. At the time, the scheme was seen by many people as radical and pioneering, encouraging young people to explore new challenges, to take risks and to show their own initiative. As our correspondent Elaine Dunkley reports now, the scheme has indeed enriched the lives of millions of young people, even during this pandemic.
The Duke of Edinburgh's Award. Activities, expeditions and adventures. For millions of people, it has been part of growing up. It aims to give young people from all backgrounds a sense of achievement outside of the classroom through field trips and volunteering.
How many times do you think you got lost?
For these pupils at secondary school in the heart of Manchester, the experience has been life-changing.
Like when you go on Duke of Edinburgh, it's just a whole different environment. It's like green everywhere, like as far as you can see.
Even signing up for it was a bit out of my comfort zone, because prior to it I was quite shy and reserved and didn't really talk to many people in my year.
I've been working for a charity shop in my community, and I think definitely it's been a very interesting. You get to meet lots of new people, get to touch lots of interesting people, hear their story.
Had fun and made so many friends without, I don't know how I'd have gotten through my high school years, honestly. It's really, really good.
It began in 1956 and grew out of the Duke's own experiences at Gordonston. The award's ethos was rooted in the philosophy of the school's headmaster, Kurt Hahn, who felt that education should be about more than just academic achievement.
It was based on Hahn's theory that you shouldn't be a specialist in any one thing, and he felt that that you shouldn't concentrate entirely on academic education. His philosophy was that if you could get young people to succeed in any area of activity, that mere sensation of success would spread over into a lot of others.
When the scheme first started, it was considered quite revolutionary, but it also had its detractors.
I think a lot of organisations thought it was going to be a rival. The Scouts, the Guides, Outward Bound Trust, all kinds of people thought, oh dear, here comes another youth organisation to rival us. The cleverness was that it was a programme which was complementary and not competitive, so anyone could do it.
The programme has moved with the times. It started as a boys-only group, and even when girls joined, there was a gender divide.
Can you tell me how you'll be able to get instructors and adjudicators to teach things like marriage and make-up and all the other new schemes you've mentioned in the pamphlet?
Oh, make-up we've got no problem. Marriage might be a bit more difficult.
From helping at food banks to vaccination centres, during the pandemic, many young people have volunteered through the scheme.
Are you here for the vaccine, madam? All right. I think the Duke of Edinburgh is fantastic to gain, especially independence. Everyone can do it. Everyone's helping the community. Everyone's being active. Everyone's learning a new skill. And I think the inclusion of the youth is fantastic.
OK, guys, ready to go?
Throughout the decades, the awards have been based on physical activity, skills, service and expedition. What you choose to do in each category is almost unlimited. Then there are 3 levels: gold, silver and bronze.
It's his vision and energy that created the organisation that enabled many, many young people to be able to access these development opportunities, and he was an absolute sort of stalwart champion for young people's sort of opportunities and development right the way through until he retired. While this is it's an incredibly sort of sad moment to reflect on his passing, we are incredibly optimistic about the fact that we can build on his incredible legacy, and the award will still be going strong many, many years from now.
Its popularity and success has spread across the globe, with more than 140 countries taking part. The scheme that bears his name will perhaps be his greatest legacy, a testament to the ideas and outlook of the Duke of Edinburgh.
Just a good reflection there on the worth of the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme, which of course has benefited many millions of young people. Let's have a final word at this stage with our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witchell. One of the big advantages, Nick, of course, today in an extended programme like this is to show lots of the story, lots of the images. Lots of people in the UK today of a younger age will not be familiar with the Duke and the role that he's played.
It's a generational thing, isn't it? I mean, people of our age will appreciate the colour that he brought to the national stage over so many decades. But he had a keen affinity with younger people, as we've just seen through the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme. 7 million people in, I think it's about 130 countries around the world have taken part in it. And I watched him not so many years ago at St James's Palace giving out the gold awards. And he still really enjoyed that. He did have this affinity with younger people. He once described himself as a discredited Balkan prince of no particular merit. This was a man from European royalty, born a prince of Greece, though principally of Danish blood, and he came to be one of the most influential and important outsiders to marry into the House of Windsor. He had a sharp mind and a sharp tongue. He didn't suffer fools. He could be arrogant and abrasive. Somebody once said there was a sense of danger about him, but the Queen was absolutely devoted to him throughout their 73 years of marriage. And you know, when finally I think the reign of Queen Elizabeth II does come to an end and we assess its importance within the long history of the monarchy within the United Kingdom, the name of Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, will deserve great credit for the contribution that he made to the success and stability of this reign.
Indeed. Nick, once again, thank you so much. Nicholas Witchell there with his thoughts, our royal correspondent. So at that time, let's go to Nick, who's got the latest on the weather for us. Hi, Nick.
Hello, Hugh. This cold front has reintroduced Arctic air across many parts of the UK today, and that's going to lead to a cold weekend with some sunshine, but also a few wintry showers around. Along that weather front, we've had some rain today across parts of Wales, the Midlands and East Anglia. More of southern England will see some of that overnight. It'll also turn wetter overnight in the Channel Islands, but the cloud will keep the frost at bay, whereas elsewhere, under clear skies, a very frosty night to come with still a few wintry showers into Northern Ireland and northern Scotland. So for the weekend, a high pressure sitting to the west of us will draw in the air from that cold direction, the north, but another set of weather fronts will just brush southeast England with some outbreaks of rain, perhaps into parts of East Anglia, but more especially in a line from Essex across to Hampshire southwards, and a keen, chilly northeasterly breeze with that. Whereas elsewhere, there's plenty of sunshine, just a few of these showers getting going again of rain, but also sleet, hail, some snow to higher ground, and there may be thundery in Scotland. And single-figure temperatures well below average for the time of year. It's a cold day. Now, Saturday evening and night, the rain will clear away from southeast England. Wintry showers elsewhere will slowly fade, and we're left with another clear start on Sunday morning, but another cold and frosty one. With sunshine, a few wintry showers, largely by the afternoon confined to England and Wales. Clouding over in Northern Ireland, some rain, sleet and snow edging towards Scotland. A cold day, becoming less cold next week, Hugh.
Nick, thank you very much. Nick Miller there with the weather for us. There is continuing coverage on BBC Two and on the BBC News Channel with Clive Myrie. And here on BBC One, we'll be joining our news teams where you are. I'll be back later at 10. We'll leave you now with a blend of memorable images from the life of Prince Philip. Goodbye.
After a long and eventful life, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, has died at the age of 99. Prince Philip was, by some distance, the longest-serving royal consort in British history, a role he'd made his own. From the day of his marriage to the future Queen and throughout her long reign, he was at her side in good times and bad.
He has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years, and I and his whole family, and this and many other countries, owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim or we shall ever know.
The Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme for young people is just one of the achievements he will be remembered for, and for which he has received praise from political leaders.
Like the expert carriage driver that he was, he helped to steer the royal family and the monarchy so that it remains an institution indisputably vital to the balance and happiness of our national life.
In recent years, the Duke was rarely seen in public. He'd retired from public duties in 2017 after 70 years of service. Prince Philip was last seen as he returned home to Windsor on the 16th of March following a month-long stay in hospital. His loss will be felt most keenly today by his widow, the Queen, whose reign has been sustained by his advice and presence. You're watching BBC News in the UK, on PBS and around the globe. Buckingham Palace has announced the death of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. In a statement, the palace said, "It is with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen announces the death of her beloved husband, His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. His Royal Highness passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle." Further announcements will be made in due course. The royal family join with people around the world in mourning his loss. Flags on all government buildings across the United Kingdom are being flown at half-mast to mark the Duke's death. Politicians will deliver their own tributes when Parliament is recalled at Westminster on Monday. All campaigning for May's elections has been suspended. The government is asking people not to gather or leave flowers at royal residences because of the current restrictions and to minimise travel. Well, our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witchell, is here with us now. Nick, we are going through a time of national crisis with coronavirus. And it's clear that the Queen's messages during this time have helped unite the country in the middle of all this. And yet, with the Duke by her side, he has been part of the reason the royal family has been so successful, and indeed the Queen's reign has been so successful over so many years.
He's been described to me as the unsung hero of this reign, and that it's not generally appreciated, that the reign has been a team effort, a partnership between the two of them, notwithstanding, as we keep saying, he had no constitutional role, and Queen Elizabeth is absolutely, no impropriety in terms of letting him see constitutional state documents. But it was his role in support of her that was so important, because she came to the throne at the age of 25, quite a shy, reserved young woman, daunted by the prospect, very businesslike, took on the kind of executive responsibilities of being head of state. But she needed to have this very self-confident, self-reliant husband at her side. Now, as we have been saying, he found it difficult because there was resistance from the courtiers from Buckingham Palace as it was then, and he found it a very bumpy time. They were absolutely bloody to him, one of his friends at the time said. But he fought through that. There was great frustration at the time, but he found a role for himself, made a contribution of his own, but most importantly, he made this contribution in support of her. And that, I think, is what he will be remembered most for, and certainly appreciated for, within the royal family and within the sort of central nucleus of the state, if you like, that he was there 2 steps behind the Queen, but always sort of metaphorically at her side. He was the one person to whom she could turn in difficult moments, the one person she could absolutely rely on, and she took advantage of that. I mean, it's suggested, for example, that he used to write or draft the Queen's Christmas broadcast, or and I think one got a clue to that in some of the tributes that she paid to him. My strength and stay, she said famously at the time of the Golden Wedding, my constant strength and guide, she said at the time of the Diamond Jubilee. Well, for somebody who's been on the throne for 60 years, and she's very precise about the wording and the vocabulary that she uses, my constant strength and guide. That gives you a clue, I think, from the Queen as to just how important he was.
But finding that role in the 1950s, a man of action,
yeah,
in the Navy, could have pursued that career, but he didn't. He gave it up for the woman that he loved and for the country that he loved. To play that second fiddle role effective, that must have been so hard at that time.
It was, and that's why he found it so difficult. Yes, he could have, it said, risen to the top of the Royal Navy, could have been First Sea Lord, this sort of thing. He was, he's a dominant personality, a natural leader, a natural alpha male kind of thing. Now, those were the characteristics about him with which the Queen clearly fell in love as Princess Elizabeth, and she never had any thought of anyone else to be her husband. And, of course, Philip was... it was almost the one rebellious thing she did in her life. He wasn't from Eton and the Guards. He was from Gordonston and the Royal Navy. He came from this fractured, rootless past. Although he was, like the Queen, from a royal background, he was from European royalty, born as a prince of Greece, booted out of the country when he and his family had to flee when he was just very small. He's not, no Greek blood in him at all. He was actually mostly Danish and a bit of German and a bit of Russian and British. And then he settled in the United Kingdom, found his roots here. And it was really at places like Gordonston that this very self-reliant, tough-minded young man, very self-confident, emerged. And that then was translated into the Royal Navy. And, as I say, he could have gone far in that. But during the Second World War, he came together with the younger Princess Elizabeth. A love affair developed. It was sort of arranged, he has been quoted as saying, by his uncle Earl Mountbatten. But there was undoubtedly, a real emotional connection between the two of them. And he was absolutely committed to doing his duty in the way that people of that generation perceived duty to be loyal and constant and steadfast, which I think, history will judge that in the main is what he did.
Indeed. All right, Nick, many thanks. Nicholas Switchell, our royal correspondent there. Well, tributes have been paid to the Duke since his death was announced earlier today. Our royal correspondent Daniela Ralph reports now on the reaction to the news of the Duke's death.
The Union flag at half-mast, above the palace where he had spent so much of his working life, and placed on the gates the official announcement of the Duke of Edinburgh's death.
It is to Her Majesty and her family that our nation's thoughts must turn today, because they have lost not just a much-loved and highly respected public figure, but a devoted husband and a proud and loving father, grandfather, and, in recent years, great-grandfather.
His presence and significance in British national life recognised in the tributes.
The UK has lost an extraordinary public servant in Prince Philip. He dedicated his life to our country, and above all, I think he'll be remembered for his support and devotion to the Queen. And all of our thoughts are with the Queen, the royal family, and the British public as they come together to mourn this huge loss.
Memories of an extraordinary man. A note amongst the flowers left at Windsor, where he died this morning. But the remembrance has gone way beyond this royal town.
On behalf of the Welsh Government and people in all parts of Wales, I offer our deepest condolences to Her Majesty the Queen, Her Majesty's children and their families on this sad occasion.
It is with deep sadness that I have learned of the death of His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh. It is a sadness that I know will be shared by countless others in Northern Ireland and right across the world.
When any family loses a loved one, it's really difficult, and whilst they may be public figures, they are also a family that are hurting, so I just wanted to extend my condolences to them.
At the Queen's official residence in Scotland, the formal announcement and personal memories.
He had a close association, of course, with Scotland. He went to school in Scotland. I know that he enjoyed all of the time he spent at Balmoral. He had a very long association as Chancellor with the University of Edinburgh. But probably above all of that, the Duke of Edinburgh Awards scheme transformed the lives and gave hope and inspiration to countless numbers of young people.
It was back in July that we last saw the Duke of Edinburgh on an official engagement in Windsor. a rare public appearance and a reminder of his role within royal life.
Prince Philip sums up a life lived well and ended well. And I would say across the nation we can look at this life, feel a deep sense of pride, a deep sense of admiration and gratitude.
The royal family will grieve in private for now, but tonight on the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's charity website, a message that thanks the Duke of Edinburgh for his service, saying he'll be greatly missed. He had remained a memorable public figure for so many.
I want to pay respect to Prince Philip because I really like the royal family and I just feel very bad for them, what happened.
I suppose it was inevitable for a man who's 99 years of age that this will be the final outcome, but it's sad.
He's been a good guy for the country, the royal family and everything. He's served in the forces as well, which is good, like most of the royal family. And I'll miss him.
At York Minster, the bells have been rung 99 times as a mark of respect for the Duke's 99 years. It is a tribute that will be repeated across the UK for a man who held a unique place in public life.
Daniela Ralph reporting there. Helena Wilkinson is at Windsor for us this evening. Helena, many will have wanted to turn up, pay their own tributes, perhaps leave flowers and so on, but of course COVID has made that more difficult for many.
Yes, I think, Clive, it would have been a different situation here at Windsor Castle had it not been for the fact that we still remain under some COVID restrictions. But when the news rippled through this royal town that the Duke of Edinburgh had died, locals mainly started coming here to the castle. They laid some flowers, some bouquets of flowers just outside of the castle. Some cards were laid too, but then the palace later on this afternoon was urging members of the public not to lay flowers outside Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace, and if they wanted to, they could donate to a charity. We spoke to a little boy called Oscar who left a card here. In that card he wrote, "Your Majesty, so sorry about hearing about your amazing husband." And another lady we spoke to said, "It's really sad. I just wanted him to get to 100." The Duke of Edinburgh, of course, a couple of months off his 100th birthday. But he and the Queen had been isolating here for the past year since the pandemic began to unravel. They